Good evening, good evening, and thank you for joining us here on blackdoctor.org. I am Ellis Dean, your host and moderator for tonight. And I'm going to tell you something that you already know. It is November, okay? And so a couple of things that we know about the month of November. November is the second to last month of the year, of the calendar year. We all get excited about December and Christmas and New Year's and all this stuff. But November also has Thanksgiving, which you already know because you probably are still trying to work off those pounds that we all put on last week. And that tonight's subject is really appropriate, especially when we're talking about eating cakes and pies and all those things that we ate during Thanksgiving. And then we're going to take a break and get right back into it for Christmas. So tonight's conversation is really appropriate. But also one more thing that's unique about November, it is Diabetes Awareness Month. And as many of you know, Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by diabetes, and it has a large ranging impact on our bodies. Particularly on our eyes and on our kidneys. And so tonight we're going to be talking about diabetes, and we've got two great experts, not me, but we've got two great experts that are going to bring some wonderful information for you and your family and also for your children, because we're going to be talking about the kiddos tonight too. So a couple of things I need for you to do before we bring on our guests. And number one, let us know where you're watching from. We'd like to know where people are watching us from all over the world. So if you drop that in the comment section and let us know, we'll give you a shout out. Number two, if you know somebody that needs this information, please share this on your page or tag them and let them know, hey, we've got this great conversation going on tonight that I think you need to listen to or that you need to watch. So do that for me. And then number three, if you have any questions, throughout tonight's broadcast, please drop those in the comments as well. And we'll try to get them asked if we can and answered, because this show is all about you and getting you the information you need so you can make better health decisions. And finally, anything that you hear tonight is going to be for informational purposes only. So if you are under the care of a physician, if your child is under the care of a physician or an ophthalmologist, nephrologist, or all the ologists we're going to be talking about tonight, what I need for you to do is take this information and go have that conversation. Do not change your treatment plan. Do not alter anything until you have that conversation with your primary care physician, right? Because they need to look at your chart and they need to draw blood and all this other stuff. They're not going to be able to do that tonight. So you got to make sure that you have that conversation before you make any alterations or start talking about changes to your treatment plan. All right, we're good? All right. Let's go. So we're going to introduce you to our two wonderful physicians that we have tonight. Of course, it's a Seeing Eye to Eye. This is our monthly show with our partners at the CVA, that's Children's Vision Equity Alliance. We have our friends at the National Eye Institute, as well as our friends at Prevent Blindness. I cannot stress that enough how great this partnership has been. So first we have Dr. Christelle Wicon-Kameni. He is a pediatrician who is, like doctors are completing a fellowship in nephrology, which is the fancy word for kidney disease. So that's, when you hear nephrology, just think kidney disease. And then we also have Dr. Jessica Randolph. She is an ophthalmologist and retina specialist. And she's going to be coming on. We're going to be talking about how diabetes impacts your kids. And so, again, you need to sign on to see my smiling face, and we're going to see those two smiling faces there as well. So I see we got Ori Brown. She's coming in from Wilmington, Delaware. Wow, Delaware. They got Black people in Delaware. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Like that. And then we got Karen Winfield from NYC. So put your borough there, Karen. The NYC, that's a big one. So you got to put Bronx, Brooklyn, where are you from, Staten Island, Long Island. Throw that in there as well. So welcome. How are y'all doing?
Good. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here to chat with y'all.
So Queens, yes. Yes, I am happy that you're here because, as I said at the top of the program, it is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we know, I think, Dr. Wicon-Kameni, stop me if I'm wrong, but as Black Americans are about 13% of the population, but I think we represent about 33% of cases of diabetes, which is completely disproportionate. And so we need to we're going to start from the basics. So we're going to assume that people don't know what it is and what we're talking about. So we'll start with you. We'll say, what is diabetes? And then help us understand the difference between types 1 and 2.
Absolutely. Before I start, I just want to thank you for that disclaimer you said before we started about this is informational purposes only. We want to give great information, but please, please, please consult with your physician, your kid's physician, your kid's pediatrician, and because what was said before, they really need to be able to go through their chart and to be able to individualize their treatment plan to provide the best care. That being said, I am more than happy to talk to you about diabetes and kind of the difference between type 1 and type 2. And so, diabetes, at its essence, is when you have a lot of sugar in your blood, and that amount of sugar in your blood can cause a lot of really bad things. It can cause things such as damage to your eyes, damage to your kidneys. It ultimately can be pretty damaging to your health overall, and it can be a chronic condition. And so there are two different types of diabetes. There's type 1, and then there's type 2. And so type 1 is what we typically see more so in the pediatric population, in children, and we can also see it in some adults. It's more of an autoimmune condition. That means that your body essentially attacks cells in the body, and so your body's attacking itself. And the specific cells that a body is attacking are the cells in the pancreas. The pancreas is an organ that helps to regulate blood sugars. And so when your body is attacking the cells in the pancreas, the cells that are making insulin, which is the hormone that allows you to take sugar from your blood and bring it back into the cells in your body, those cells are being attacked, and so they're dying. And so because those cells that create insulin are dying, there isn't enough insulin in the body to take the sugar from your blood and bring it back into the cells in your body to store that for energy. And so because there isn't enough insulin, you have a lot of sugar in your blood, more sugar than your blood can handle, and it ends up causing all sorts of problems, like I had mentioned before. Um, and as I'd said, this type of diabetes is more so seen in kids, and it occurs between ages 5 and 6 and 11 and 13. Those are the peak years that we see it, but we can see it at any age ultimately. Type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is the other type of diabetes that I believe is more commonly known about. That's the diabetes where your pancreas is actually making the insulin that it needs to make in the body. And although your body is making insulin to take the sugar from the blood into the cells of the body, your body just isn't responding to the insulin the way it's supposed to. And so you become what's called insulin resistant, meaning that the insulin your body's making isn't working. And so your body acts like that insulin in your body, that's in your body isn't there. And so you have that same buildup of sugar in your body. And because it's not working, you end up having all sorts of issues, like, again, kidney disease because of diabetes. You have eye disease because of diabetes, and a host of other conditions as well. And we tend to see diabetes type 2 more so in people who tend to be more overweight and more obese. And so that is associated with type 2 diabetes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, because I mean, that autoimmune explanation for type 1 is really, really important, because it does talk about how your body starts attacking itself, right? And so that is significant. And then type 2, it's about, sometimes things don't work. Look, you get to a certain age, some things in your body don't work the way it's supposed to work. Like, I can speak to that. And so what we need people to be really concerned about and start thinking about is, the obesity is a diagnosis. It's not a description. So I want to make people very, very aware of that. It is a diagnosis. And so if we can keep our weight down, that can help prevent that process of your body your body becoming insulin resistant. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm a big proponent of getting people to recognize that obesity is a diagnosis. It's not a description, even though we tend to use it as such. So what are those signs and symptoms that we should be thinking about when we're looking for diabetes, particularly in children? Because I know you're a pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a small child. what should I be looking for to say, okay, look, that looks like it could be diabetes?
Absolutely. More than happy to answer that. And so the signs that you may see in a kid that may have diabetes can be a bit tricky to spot initially. They tend to wet the bed a bit more, especially kids that are already potty trained and kids that don't really wet the bed anymore. If they're starting to wet the bed and you don't have a clear answer as to why they're doing that, and they just kind of continue to do it, especially after they had stopped doing it before, that is a sign to just kind of ask your doctor about. Because that could be due to diabetes. It could also be due to anxiety or other things that the child is going through. But that is definitely a sign to consider, or a symptom to consider. Another thing to look out for is increased frequency of peeing. And so if your child is peeing too, and that you're used to seeing them pee, then that is something that you want to be able to spot and be like, hey, that's not I don't think that's right. I don't know why he or she's peeing like 8, 9, 10 times in a few hours when they usually pee maybe like 2 or 3 times in a few hours. And so that's a red flag to look out for. A couple other things to look out for would be increased thirst and increased appetite. So if your child just is drinking just a lot more water, a lot more fluids than they typically do, they're always thirsty, always saying that they want to drink something, that is something that you want to be on the lookout for and to ask your doctor about. And then also just being more tired and more fatigued. When you have all that sugar that's building up in your blood, you don't feel right. You just feel kind of down. You feel like you want to just lay down. You just want to sleep. You don't feel like doing anything. Your energy levels are just lower. And so that is something to consider. And then especially in type 1 diabetes, if your kid is starting to lose rapid amounts of weight, that is a sign to go to your doctor as soon as you can and just ask about why your kid is losing weight and kind of talk to the other symptoms that you may be witnessing in your child. And then in type 2 diabetes, you want to just make sure that you're looking for like darkened areas of skin, especially in the neck or in the armpit area. Those areas of the body tend to become a bit more darker than other areas of your body. That is a sign of insulin resistance, which is associated with type 2 diabetes.
All right, so that's a great list. So I hope everybody was taking notes. So number 1, if they're wetting the bed when they've already been potty trained, so that's a symptom. Number 2, if they're frequently going to the bathroom, so more than normal, and they don't have a 50-year-old man's prostate, then they shouldn't be going to the bathroom that much. So if they're going to the bathroom, they're a small child, you should be looking for that too. You increase appetite. Right, so they're eating and increased thirst, right? So they're consuming more fluids, but they say they cannot quench that thirst. Their appetite has gone up rapidly, and they're not going through normal life changes. So, like, puberty, there's going to be some appetite changes during that time, but this is just during that time where they're not going through a growth spurt, and yet they're having those types of symptoms. Pay attention to that, and then of course those dark spots are on the neck, underarm, things like that. So, did I get it right, Doc?
You got it right.
Okay.
You're MD.
I'm more well versed in DMs, not MDs.
That's funny.
All right. So as we bring the show back on the rails, so let's shift to you, Dr. Randolph.
Yes.
You're an ophthalmologist, so you're dealing with eyes. You're a retina specialist. So
Yes.
Can diabetes affect the eyes of children?
Absolutely. Diabetes in general in the country is one of the most common causes of disability. And so for kids especially, it doesn't necessarily mean disability, but for all comers, you can have blurry vision and vision changes from diabetes. Especially in kids with the fluctuating sugars, we can see that vision changes will fluctuate. And so your child may notice that their vision is blurry one day and then better the next, and then blurry again, and this kind of back and forth, up and down. Also, the vision may just be blurry. They could have constant or frequent glasses changes They may even notice some headaches with eye strain trying to read or see the board in class. And so diabetes can definitely affect the vision and the eyes, especially.
So how can my child's doctor test for diabetes? And so, Dr. Wikan Kameni, I know you're the specialist on that one. So how can it be tested? Is it a blood test or is it something else that's different?
Absolutely. So there are a few different ways that the pediatrician can test for diabetes, and so one telltale way is just testing the kid's urine. And so a urine test is pretty simple to do. You can do a urine dipstick test, and it's essentially you have a kid pee in a cup, and you take the little what we call a dipstick, and you can put the urine on a dipstick, and it can give you an idea of various different components of the urine, and it'll tell you like if there's protein in the urine, if there's blood in the urine, if there's sugar in the urine. It tells you quite a variety of things. And so we have those dipsticks in our clinic, but we also have what's called a urinalysis, which is a more advanced form of a dipstick. And so all that to say, you can check the kid's urine, and if there's an abnormal amount of glucose in the urine or sugar in the urine, that's a telltale sign that something's wrong. A couple other things you can do. You can check the kid's blood, and the blood we can get an idea of how much sugar is in the blood just by a simple blood test, especially if the blood test is what we call a fasting blood sugar test. So if the kid hasn't had anything to eat for a while and then got a blood test and the sugar is still really high, then that's a sign that the child may be maybe have diabetes. And then one other thing that we can check in the blood test is what's called a hemoglobin A1C. That is a special type of blood test where we see just how much of what we call glycated hemoglobin, see what that level is, and we can see if that level is high or normal or low. If it's high, then that gives us an idea of a potential diagnosis of diabetes.
So I'm gonna ask something that's not even on. So is that why when you're about to go get your physical, they tell you not to eat after midnight because they want to get that fasting?
Well, especially if they're wanting to check for diabetes, that is one reason as to why they tell you not to eat after midnight. They want to make sure that whatever blood test they're getting in the morning or in the daytime is not impeded by the food that you ate, because as you can imagine, a lot of food has glucose in it, and so if you're eating a lot of food, that those components can get into your blood, and so it can be falsely higher than what your true blood sugar is.
Okay, I just thought it was like a method of torture that they just laugh at us about. All right, so.
We're nice. Us doctors are nice. We don't like to torture.
So Dr. Randolph, when should children with diabetes first get screened for diabetic eye disease, and what are some of those screening guidelines?
It depends on what type of diabetes that the child has. So for type 1 diabetics, the recommendation is screening once in the first 5 years of diagnosis. Okay. And then for patients who have type 2 diabetes, they recommend screening at the time of diagnosis. So if you're diagnosed this year, then you get your screening this year. And the reason for that is because the diabetes takes some time to affect the eyes usually. And so you have that sort of 5-year buffer for a type 1 diabetic because those patients are usually diagnosed a little bit sooner. And so it takes more time for that damage to the retina to occur. And when we have these screenings, we're going to dilate the patient's eyes and take a look in the back with special equipment so that we can look at the retina itself. And the retina is where the rods and cones are, if you remember that from like high school science class. And so we're looking to see what kind of damage has happened from the diabetes there. And there's different levels. And so we're trying to see what level the diabetes is. And then from there, we can judge what the screening regimen will be like. If there's a lot of diabetes damage, then it may be every 3 months versus if there's none, it may be just a yearly exam.
Well, I did learn a little bit about diabetic retinopathy, which is it's a kind of a condition that can be caused as a result of diabetes. And your eyes are very, very fascinating. And so they will start trying to they'll start to grow blood vessels, external blood vessels in there because your vision is being impaired by blood sugars. And then, but those blood vessels aren't very strong and they can tear and call pooling and all types of stuff going on in your eyes. So I say all that to say, make sure your blood sugar is under control so you won't have any of those issues. So how often? So you said how often should they get screened? Especially if it's a child, is it annual? Or is it just dependent upon the severity of the eye condition?
Depending on the severity of the retinopathy or the retina damage after that first screening. So like you said, the people that have the really severe damage with those abnormal blood vessels growing, they're going to be monitored really closely because they're high risk for losing vision. Versus someone who has no signs of diabetic retinopathy, then they can go once a year and just have a regular annual exam.
Okay. All right. So if your diabetes is well controlled, if your child's diabetes is well controlled, annual exam, you should be fine. But if it's not well controlled, if their blood sugar is above the limits that they should be over, then you might want to get a more frequent as they're getting tested. So, Dr. Christelle, how do we control our child's blood sugar? How do we control our child's diabetes if they're diagnosed? Like, what are some things that we could be doing? Because these are the things that people really want to know. Is okay, got diabetes now. I've been diagnosed with diabetes. My child's been diagnosed with diabetes. How do I help them control their blood sugar?
Yeah, so there are quite a few things you can do to help control their blood sugars and to help manage diabetes. And so I want to start by saying that just because your child has diabetes, that doesn't sentence them to any kind of, bad life or anything like that. Okay. So diabetes is very manageable. And as long as you help control their blood sugars, then they can live a perfectly normal life, live a long life. And so it's all about controlling those blood sugars, whether that's type 1 or type 2, okay? And so one thing that you want to ensure that you do is to make sure that you monitor the blood sugars levels frequently. And especially with kids, when they're diagnosed with diabetes, we typically link them up with a pediatric endocrinologist. And so the endocrinologist is a hormone doctor, essentially, and they help with type 1, type 2 diabetes in kids. And so they are very well equipped to assist families with blood sugar monitoring and have all types of amazing devices that are still being made and getting better and better as time goes on. And so always monitoring the blood sugars. And then once you monitor the blood sugars, just make sure that you're given insulin or any other medication that's prescribed to you by your doctor. And just as your kid gets older, you want to ensure that you're also giving them, fostering some independence into them, giving them that agency to make sure that they're able to keep up with their insulin management, keep up with their medications, keep up with checking their blood sugars. Because when you allow them to foster that independence and increase their sense of responsibility for their health, they're more likely to live a more active and healthy life, as opposed to doing it for them all the time in their teenage years, and then once they get older, they don't really know how to take care of themselves. And so fostering that independence is so key. And then, keeping the blood sugars within the normal range to decrease the chances of negative effects that high blood sugars can bring to health, which can cause long-term problems. And then increasing physical activity. And, everyone says, you need to work out more, you got to walk more. And I mean, it's very vague. People always say that, but it's like, what does that mean? And so, whenever I talk with families, I like to try and give some concrete steps, some practical things that they can do, such as, even if it's like taking the family walk once, trying to do it like maybe starting off with like once a week, and then trying to make that more of a routine multiple times a week. And even if it's just like 10, 15 minutes, just like getting more active and starting to like build those baby steps so that you can start to encourage them to increase their physical activity, and it becomes more of a habit. And going from walking to going for a little jog, going from there to like playing, maybe trying out for a sports team, doing PE, it just kind of like helping them establish a healthier lifestyle. And then of course, just also looking out for the things that they're eating or drinking, trying to avoid sugars, high sugar meals, trying to or high sugar drinks, just being more mindful of what the child is eating. It doesn't mean necessarily that they have to like cut cold turkey everything that they're eating and drinking. It's just more so trying to be more moderate about what they're doing and trying to kind of wean out the really bad things that they don't really need to be eating or drinking. Okay. And so those are some of the things that come to mind. And of course, just trying to find a community, it's hard to live with a chronic illness, and especially as a child. And some kids can be mean, like we all remember going through grade school and being picked on and whatnot. And so just wanted to make sure that you try to develop a sense of community with the child by finding other children or families that also dealing with diabetes, and if they're okay, just trying to help them link with each other, or showing them to communities, like online communities. There's a bunch of Facebook groups for everything these days. There are different organizations that have communities, so just trying to link up the families and the patients with those communities.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm completely with you. And food is medicine. I know that's a cliche that gets thrown out a lot, but really is in terms of. And so if your child is unfortunate enough, to develop diabetes, really start getting them on eating a healthier diet and developing that discipline, right? And so in terms of in making those decisions. So I love what you're talking about in terms of fostering independence. There's another fancy word like agency. Yeah. That they throw out a lot when they say that, in terms of, but really it's about your child taking control over their lives, and the more control that they have, the better they're going to exert it in their life. Whereas they feel like, oh, I don't have any control over this, I'm just going to eat anyway. The final thing I would say is that you got to find the hidden sugars, right? So you got to start reading labels on food. There's sugar hidden in a lot of things, even if it doesn't taste sweet. There could be sugar hidden in there, like those Gatorades and all those drinks. They don't taste sweet, but they have a lot of sugar in them. They have a lot of sodium in there. And so you have to be very, very cognizant and mindful. So one thing we talked about is shopping the perimeter of the store. Shop the perimeter first. That's where we're going to have the freshest foods, the more natural foods, your produce, your meats, things like that. And then before you go into the aisles, because the aisle is going to be foods that have a lot more preservatives and hidden sugars and fats. And so you got to be really, really careful about that. Particularly when we're talking about children, because they're developing habits based on what you feed them, what you give them to eat. And so you give them good food, give them good fuel, then their body will respond accordingly. So can I step off my soapbox now? I'm stepping. Right.
You look good up there. You look good up there.
Appreciate it. All right. So we're going to so now I'm going to ask the bad question. All right. A tough question. What can happen if diabetes is left untreated?
Yeah. So if you leave diabetes untreated, you can, so for one, especially type 1 diabetes, if that's left untreated, your kid can very quickly go into a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, or we call it DKA. And that's a condition where your body reacts to the amount of high sugars in the blood in a wide variety of ways, which ultimately end up putting your body in a state of what's called acidosis. And so your body has a lot of acids in itself. And once that happens, it becomes very dangerous to leave your kid unattended. They have to come to the emergency room, and they ultimately may have to go to the ICU for treatment. They feel really sick, very tired. They don't look like themselves. They are breathing hard, and they're also very dehydrated and very tired. And in my pediatric residency training, I've taken care of quite a few kids in DKA, and it's scary. It can be really scary to see that. Thankfully, it's relatively simple to treat. You just give them, you titrate a bunch of fluids with, components that help them get better. And those IV fluids and the insulin that we give them helps to, turn them around pretty quickly. But if not treated, the kid could very well die. And so we want to make sure that we take that seriously. And if you're concerned about your child and any, for whatever reason, it's always safe to just take your kid to see a physician, see a provider. And it's just better to do that than to not do that and be sorry about it. And so that's one thing that I wanted to make sure that's well understood. In terms of just, type 1 and type 2 diabetes as well, if this left untreated, you can you can have all sorts of negative long-term outcomes. You can have, we talked about vision issues, not being able to see as well, having blurry vision, your blood vessels in the back of your eyes, you can grow more and more of those, and that can lead to permanent vision loss in the future. You can have kidney injury, and especially like as the kid gets older, it goes to adulthood. If their diabetes is left unchecked, they can ultimately have kidney failure and go and need dialysis for their kidneys. We can have all sorts of nerve damage. The sugars, the high amounts of sugar in the body can injure the nerves, and so you start feeling numb in your fingers and your toes. And so that's a huge issue. It's called diabetic neuropathy. You can have poor wound healing, and so if you have like cuts or big cuts, your body won't be able to heal itself as well, and so those cuts kind of stay there, and that can get infected. It can cause all sorts of issues. You can have heart disease with diabetes, and you can also have just a weaker immune system in general, which again leaves you more susceptible, more likely to get infections. And so it's kind of crazy because it's like sugar is sugar. Why is sugar doing all this? How can sugar do all this to you? How can it hurt you so much? But it's just the way your body processes it, the way your body reacts to it for long amounts of time. Sugar can be deadly, especially in really high amounts, and so it's something not to take lightly.
Just to highlight one thing that you said, Dr. Wiikon-Kameni, that it's the chronic sugars, the sugars over a long time. This isn't, if you have one high reading last week, it doesn't mean that these things are happening. But if your sugars are consistently high over a really long time, that's when we start to worry about this stuff. And it's that chronic, long-term damage from the blood sugars that causes the eye damage and the kidney damage and the nerve damage and all of these things that we've been talking about.
Thanks for that.
And you can amputations. It can lead to amputations. So you're talking about PAD and CAD are also a result of diabetes, and so you get to that point, and particularly for people of color, there tends to be a quickness where we're more quick to have limbs amputated, and studies have shown that people that have limbs amputated, their life expectancy shortens by 3 to 5 years as a result of losing a leg or limb or something like that, eyesight as well. So it's very, very serious. And so we're going to make sure that we have programs like these to get you on the right track, encourage you and refer you to like the American Diabetes Association, other associations out there that are designed to help people deal with diabetes. So thank you for that. That's always a hard one to deal with because you start talking about those consequences, and it's very, very difficult. So we'll take a quick moment to shout out all the people that are joining us that are in the comments. We got New Jersey. We got somebody from the Virgin Islands. That's what's up.
That's awesome.
VA is in the house. Virginia, we've got Richmond, Fairfax, we got Williamsburg, we got all in the house. Cincinnati, Ohio's in the house. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Those are just the people that are putting the comments in. So give yourself a shout out. Also, again, share this on your page. Oh, Georgia, thank you, Lisa. You're representing Georgia. So continue to put that in there. And again, if you have any questions as well, please put those in the comments. There we go. Indianapolis, Naptown. What's going on? So, all right. Moving on in the conversation. Dr. Randolph, are there treatments for diabetic eye disease in kids?
Absolutely. We talked about, different stages of diabetes, and there's two main ways that diabetes can affect the vision and cause the blurry vision. One is something called diabetic macular edema, where the very center part of the vision in the retina swells, and this swelling can cause blurry vision changes, and if it's not treated, permanent vision changes in the central vision. And so what this would look like was if you kind of close with one eye and look, you'd see sort of blurry splotches around or right in the center vision. Versus that, we talked about the proliferative diabetic retinopathy a little bit earlier with those new blood vessels growing in the back of the eye and the front of the eye, and they can bleed into the back of the eye, into the jelly of the eye, and cause a lot of problems. And that can actually lead to like totally lights out, black, permanent, full vision loss. And either way, we want to treat both of these. And the treatment's very similar in them. And the treatment is a type of medicine called anti-VEGF medicine, which we deliver as an injection into the eye. I know it sounds completely insane, but I do this on people all the time. Nobody screams. It's all good. And so I do a lot of numbing. I'm pretty sneaky with the needle, so you don't see it coming. And these injections help to treat both either the macular edema or the proliferative diabetic retinopathy. The good thing about the injections is they're, believe it or not, quick and easy in the clinic with, minimal side effects, minimal anesthesia, but they wear off after about 6 weeks. And for the people who have the more severe damage, that proliferative diabetes, where those abnormal blood vessels are growing and causing more severe and more worrisome problems for total blindness, then we'll do a procedure called a laser, a panretinal laser photocoagulation, or PRP. And this, I use a laser that's mounted on the little headset that I use to look in the back of the eye. And I put a whole bunch of laser spots around the side vision part where you're not really using that part of your retina to see as much, to help preserve the part that you are using to see. And that's also done in the clinic with, minimal or no kind of anesthesia. It's not the same as LASIK. A lot of people get that question. LASIK is basically putting your glasses prescription in the cornea in the very front of your eye. This is a treatment that's in the back of your eye to prevent that diabetic retinopathy from getting worse. And these treatments are very similar in kids or in adults. There are some other medications that we use too, like steroid treatments, which can help with some of the inflammation that's caused by diabetes and can also help with the macular edema or swelling in the center vision.
Okay, you lost me when you start talking about putting.
I know you.
And I. I'm sorry. I blanked out.
It's a teeny tiny little needle. It's about like the diameter of a human hair. Lots of numbing, and it just.
Dr. Randolph, we're friends now. We're friends now. All I can think about, I've seen too many horror movies, and
there are too many horror.
That's one of the most torturous treatments that they come up with in these movies, is something being stuck in your eye.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. They're giving us a bad name here.
Okay. So please control your blood sugar.
Yeah, control your sugar so you don't get needles in your eyes. That's horrible.
How do kids handle that? Have you had to do that in kids at all?
So because the damage takes a lot longer to occur, usually if it is a kid, it's a bit older of a kid. It's not the really young kind. If it is a really young kid, then they might have to go to the operating room for some anesthesia, for a little sedation.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But usually we're talking about like teenagers and up, and usually I can talk them through it pretty well.
Now I've been hearing about biologics being used as well for treatment. Is that delivered through the needle, or is that oral?
Through the needle.
Okay.
different versions, same medicine.
Okay. All right. I'm trying, folks. I'm trying. Okay. All right.
The most important thing is keeping the sugars down and controlled over the long term. That's the most important thing, to avoid having to see me. Since I'm a specialist, I'm seeing people once they're having the problems with the blurry vision and the diabetic retinopathy and the bleeding in the back of the eye and all of these things. Your general ophthalmologist or optometrist can do these annual exams and do the screening part of things. So you don't want to come and see me. So keep your sugars under good control so that I don't have to treat you.
So Lisa's asking a question, is this for diabetes type 1 pediatric patients? We're talking about all of it tonight, Lisa. So we've got Dr. Christelle Wukan-Kameni. He is a pediatrician that is doing a fellowship in nephrology. And then we also have Dr. Jessica Randolph. She is an ophthalmologist and a retina specialist. So we're talking about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And we're giving, there's some subtle differences between the two. In terms of how it impacts the body, but like if it's uncontrolled, it's going to have similar impact on the body. If you leave your blood sugar uncontrolled, inflammation and a whole another host of other diseases that could happen. So,
they start differently, but they end up the same.
Okay, so James is asking a question. He says, my feet are always cold, and the doctor just gave me gabapentin that doesn't work. So as we said at the top, James, you may have missed it on the top, but I would say you need to have that conversation with your doctor, right? And go back to him and say, look, this is not working, right? My feet are still cold. Is there something else? And so there are some really, really good medications that have been developed for diabetes that are out there, and some that will also help if you need to help lose weight. Some of the medications that are there will help you do that. So, a lot of times doctors will start you on something that's kind of generic. They're going to, start with the simpler stuff and then they'll work their way up to something that's more necessary. So but still you have to report back to your doctor. If you just say it doesn't work and stop taking it, then that's not doing you a service because you still have cold feet. It's not doing your doctors a service because he's not getting that feedback, or he or she is not getting that feedback. So please, 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 you can just call the office. You don't have to set an appointment. Call the office and say, hey, this is not working. What can I do? And then let either the nurse practitioner or talk to the doctor directly, and they can kind of give you that the right direction. So thank you for that question. We do appreciate that as a reminder for what we need to continue to have, that two-way communication with your physician, okay, whomever you're being treated with a nephrologist and endocrinologist. We've said a lot of ologists tonight.
Yeah.
That's still, you got to have a conversation. At the end of the day, it's got to be a conversation. It can't just be one way. All right, a couple more questions here, then we're gonna get you all out of here. All right. So, what are some ways, Dr. Randolph? What are some ways to minimize the risk of diabetic eye disease?
The most important thing is just getting the sugars under control, doing whatever you can to try to keep those sugars low and steady over the long term. And that's the most important part. So, like we've said, the diet, the exercise, seeing your friendly nephrologist or endocrinologist and primary care doctor, and just having that healthcare team and taking a proactive stance on really trying to take care of things. You miss an appointment, it snows, you can't get in, whatever, call and reschedule. Don't let a year go by before you've seen somebody. I see too many patients on my end that come in with eye problems because something like that happens, something little happens, and their friend or family member dies and the funeral's at the time of their appointment, so they don't make their appointment, and then they are, off the grid healthcare wise for a while. And then when they come back in, things are much worse. And so it's really important, really advocate for yourself and get in to see who you need to see and bring up those questions and have those conversations, like you said, with the doctor so that you can get the best care that you can. A lot of information that we've been talking about, you can reference in the resources, which I know just popped up on your chat screen with Prevent Blindness. There's a lot of information out there about diabetes and eye disease. So, educate yourself and know what to look for and know when to come in and really take control of your healthcare journey.
I think that's very important. I'm going to put it on the main screen as well. Preventblindness.org. They have a host of information that can, and so you can navigate your way through where you're talking about children's vision health, you're talking about diabetes, and they've got whole pages designed for both. There's a whole bunch of links, but I would just say go to the main website, Prevent Blindness, I can spell right, .org. And we'll put that on the screen there. So that is a fantastic resource for you to go. Also, you can go to the National Institutes of Health, NIH. They have the National Eye Institute. So I think it's nih.nei.gov. So you could also go there. It's the National Eye Institute from the National Institute of Health, and they can also have some resources. And also the Children's Vision and Equity Alliance, who is one of our partners here for this program. They're a wonderful organization for children's vision. So that's really, but I would say any one of those organizations and their websites have a host of information that can get you squared away when it comes to your vision, and as well as all of those things that can impact your vision, including something like diabetes. So I'm going to continue to put some additional resources in the comments so you can click on there. And so it's about health insurance and healthy living and all this other stuff. And all of this is also on the preventblindness.org website. So I would say just encourage everybody to go there and and just click and find what you need that's specific to your situation.
And can I throw something in there?
Sure.
The resource. So for the pediatric population, there is a website called healthychildren.org, and it's sponsored by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And there is a ton of information about all sorts of stuff, including ways to prevent diabetes, ways to make sure that you're eating a healthy diet, practical ways to increase physical activity. And so I typically reference that resource a lot to a lot of families that I serve. And it's just like a fantastic resource, like a one-stop shop for a lot of different things. Because, there's a lot of information on the internet, a lot of good information, a lot of bad information, misinformation. And so it's hard to kind of like parse out what's good and what's bad. And so I definitely like to give actual factual information that's backed up by actual academies of medicine. And so that's one resource that I just want to make sure I share.
No, you're making an excellent point about the internet. And so I'm going to go to my background is in mental health. And so I will say there's a thing, it's called selective attention, right? So we're choosing, right? And a lot of times what we do is we choose affirmation over information. And what I mean by that is that we're choosing information that we want to believe, not that is actually factual. And so if we want to believe that this miracle cure is there, that we just drink this elixir and somehow that's going to, free us from diabetes, and we're going to continue, we're going to find those sites, and there's going to be a lot of information out there, and there's going to be videos, and they're going to sell you all this stuff about how you don't need modern medicine to do that. And I will say that, I'm not going to discredit any of those places, but I will say go with the things that is backed by research. And then I would also say that you have as much control over your health as any doctor. And that is every time you put something in your mouth, you're making a health decision. And so if you're putting a candy bar and you're diabetic, you're making a health decision, right? Because that's going to spike your blood sugar and that could throw you off. So we have to be more disciplined, and we have to be more organized. And we have to say sometimes we're going to have to read some stuff that we don't want to hear. We're going to have to hear some things that we don't want to hear about. We may have to lose some weight. We may have to change our diet and find some ways to eat healthier foods. And sometimes I know it doesn't taste very good because I like sweet potato pie like everybody else. But I like living more than I like sweet potato pie. And so those are the decisions that we have to make. I just got back on my soapbox. I'm sorry.
I told you look good up there, man.
Yeah. All right. Please go to the site. I love the other site, Prevent Blindness, healthychildren.org. Please go. American Diabetes Association. They have a website that's associated with there. And also, where we're watching us on blackdoctor.org, there is a whole page, there's a whole dedicated to diabetes. And we've got a host of videos that we've done with our Kidney Talks program. And we talk about diabetes at least 3 or 4 times a year. Got a program coming up on December 7th with Dr. Grubbs, and she's the people's nephrologist. Could be about kidneys, but we're going to talk about diabetes a little bit too as a result, because the 2 biggest contributors to kidney disease are what? Hypertension and diabetes. So I've learned a little. I paid attention in class a little bit, just a little bit. So as we're wrapping up here with our 2 wonderful specialists that's put up with me for an hour, so that is they're special just for that. What are those things that you wanted to say, that you may have wanted to say throughout tonight's program that you didn't get a chance to? Or something, if there's that one thing that you want people to remember from, if they don't remember anything else, what is that one thing that you want them to remember from this conversation tonight? Dr. Randolph, we'll start with you.
Most important is to get your screening eye exam. If you haven't had an eye exam and you are above the age of 30, then make an eye appointment just to have a screening eye exam with or without diabetes. If you have diabetes and you're type 1, you need it in the first 5 years. If you're type 2 diabetic, you need it at least minimum once a year. So really, really important to get those eye exams, because we can find things early and it can make a difference to prevent you from needing treatment, needing those injections in the eyes and the lasers later. So really, really important. Just make your appointment for that eye exam. In our Black and brown patients, things like glaucoma, diabetes are more common. And so a basic screening eye exam will be looking for all of that, because all of it does much, much better when you can treat it early.
Thank you so much for that. And I learned from another retina specialist that they can detect diabetes and hypertension before you even start showing symptoms through the eyes. And
Yep.
so a lot of those things can be an early detection warning if you go get that eye exam. And so go get that fully dilated eye exam, particularly if you're over the age of 40. You should be getting that on an annual basis anyway. But if you have any other complications, you should start going in earlier for that. So thank you for that. All right, Dr. Wikan-Kameni, what are your final thoughts or something that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
Absolutely. So just two real quick things. First off, nobody's perfect. All right. And so, we all are living our lives trying to do the best we can. And whether or not you or your child has diabetes, there are going to be some good days, there are going to be some rough days, there are going to be some days that you forget the insulin, forget the medication, some days that you have some candy or eat something or drink something that you weren't supposed to drink. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just, life goes on. And as long as you're making a concerted effort to try and do the right thing, that's what matters. It's all about the habits. It's not about trying to be perfect every single time, every single day. And I mean, if you can do that, that's great, but chances are we're not going to be able to do that. And so even as doctors, we're not perfect. And so it's a two-way street trying to make sure that we do what's right by you and your child in terms of treating the condition. And then kind of going into that leads into my second thing. No question is a dumb question or a bad question. If you have a question or if you're concerned about something or you're just wondering, just ask your pediatrician, ask your doctor. They're there to help you out in whatever way they can. They're there to give you the information that you need to make the right decision you need to make for yourself or your child. Ask anything. Just don't be afraid, because it can be intimidating to come to the doctor's office, and you don't want to feel like you don't want to think that you're dumb or anything. And so it's like you kind of don't, in a sense. I've seen some families be almost afraid to ask questions in fear of looking like unknowledgeable, like having less knowledge than they have. And so I say all that to say, us doctors, we don't judge at all. Ask anything and everything, and we're there to give you the information you need.
And if I could add one final thought as we're wrapping up here, that is, have some conversations with your family about have some real health conversations as we're moving into the rest of this holiday season, and we all get together, and we're going to get together at Big Mama's house or auntie's, uncle's house. We got everybody. Get a good family history. Have those questions. And I know as people of color, we tend to not have those conversations. Did somebody pass? Well, yeah, cancer. Well, I didn't know. So let's have some real conversations, because that's how healing really begins. Because if you know that family history, then you can share it when you go to your doctor and they ask that form. And then your doctor can make better decisions about you and your health, because they know there is a family history. They can start looking for it earlier. If you've got a family history of prostate cancer, they can start saying, well, because of your family history, you might need to start getting screening earlier, and they can find it earlier, and they can start making some plans for that. So, but if you don't tell them, you just leave that blank, then they don't know. And so really have some good health conversations. I know it's difficult, but let's start having health conversations as a community and as families. And then that's where we can get healthier. So we can, and when we go see Dr. Christelle, Wikan-Kameni and Dr. Randolph, we can give them more information. And now we have two-way communication that we talked about. So again, I want to thank our partners from the Children's Vision Equity Alliance, from Prevent Blindness, as well as from the National Eye Institute. Dr. Marianu, always a pleasure to work with you. Also, I want to thank our guest this evening, Dr. Jessica Randolph, ophthalmologist, Dr. Christelle Wikan-Kameni. He is a pediatric nephrology fellow. So again, thank you all. I want to wish you all again happy holidays. Enjoy yourself with moderation. Portion sizes plate. What should be more on the plate? Put the vegetables on first, then put the other stuff on there. Just saying that works best. But please, please, please be safe and healthy and happy this holiday season. Have those conversations with your family and continue, as always, to check out blackdoctor.org for all the health and wellness information for people of color. Again, thank you all and have a good evening.